Hey, Louise here from Louise Ella Nutrition. Today I wanted to talk about how we read food labels and avoid being fooled by them, because so often we see these food labels and they're like organic and natural and low carb, high in fiber, and low fat and low sugar and all that sort of stuff, and you're like, oh yeah, that must be okay for us. But then when you actually look at the label itself, you're like, oh, there's or even the ingredients, you're like, oh, there's like 50 ingredients here, and this can't be right. So I just wanted to give you some simple tips on how to avoid being fooled by food labels. So I suppose tip number one, or the first thing I would look at is it a whole food? So, foods that are whole foods, such as like your fruits, veggies, lean meats, nuts, seeds, legumes, all of that. Is it a whole food that doesn't have any extra ingredients? So that's the first thing. And then if you're going to look at packaged stuff, look at how many ingredients are in there. So as an example, or even, let's start storage of it. So like there's Woolworths is very well known for its chocolate plastic cake that you can get, and it's got like 50 ingredients of things that you're like, really, that is not how a cake is made. But it has all these preservatives, additives, colors and things in it that can help it be preserved, which is why it's in, I call it a plastic cake, because it's just not real. Then you have things like banana cake pieces that are in like the bread aisle, and they're just like in a packet. And you're like, seriously? Like if you made a banana cake and you put it in little plastic bags and left it on a shelf, it would go moldy. That is how it is meant to go off. It's not designed to stay out on a shelf for weeks on end and have a long shelf life. So foods that really should be whole foods but are packaged and have a long shelf life should be avoided, because they just contain chemicals and things that can cause harm to your body. The next thing is looking at how they say it's organic or natural. It could be natural, but it still could be high in carbohydrates, still high in sugar, still natural, but it could be like let me show you. So as an example, sultanas. Sultanas are, these are the ones I'm referring to. So if I look, sorry, I can't see properly. So it has one serve, 50 grams, so like a small handful, right? It has 22 grams of sugar. So that's about 5.5 teaspoons of sugar per a small handful, because it's been condensed. So the sultanas have been dried up and it's a condensed amount of sugar. So if you're thinking, oh, I'll have some dried fruit as a snack, it's a huge amount of sugar. And even though it's got vitamins and minerals and things like that, it's still very high in sugar. And noting in a previous video I was saying like 6 teaspoons a day is really all you should be having. So if you have 50 grams, that's a lot of sugar. And another example is coconut water. This is the coconut water I buy because it has the least amount of sugar and it doesn't taste so sweet. I'm just not really a fan of sweet stuff. So, and I used to love sweet stuff, but you just wean yourself off after a while when, you just don't eat it anymore. So this one has, for this whole container, it's got 8 grams of sugar, which is 2 teaspoons. So if you had several of these, you could just have 3 drinks of these a day, and that's your 6 teaspoons of sugar already gone, not including anything else that you've eaten. So that's just some examples of some how looking at food labeling, and also carbohydrates. So when you're looking at food labels, have a look at the carbohydrate content. So carbohydrates are still breaks down into sugar, and carbs should always really be eaten at lunchtime, because afterwards, you might be walking around and doing stuff, where at dinner, if you're having a big thing of pasta, and then, you've just eaten all of that carbohydrates, which breaks down into sugar, then, you're going to have weight gain problems and things like that because you're not burning it off. So when we're looking at things like low sugar, low in fat, does it actually have any of that in there? I saw there was this, what was it? Marshmallows ages ago. There was a packet and it goes low in fat, and I was like, but it's mostly made out of sugar. Like, it wouldn't really have any fat in there. So sometimes it's a play on marketing to get you to buy it. And just because something is natural, like sultanas, doesn't mean that it's good for you to have large amounts of it. Some other packet food could be things like, what else is there that has, like your cereals. Cereals have a lot of refined carbohydrates. So it's looking at that as well, the refined carbohydrate side of things, like your cornflakes, your Cocoa Pops, your rice bubbles. All of that's not really a healthy choice, especially the, what are they called? The colourful ones. Also not good for you. They just contain so much colours and can cause havoc, especially with children, can cause them to be all, energized and have all sorts of problems. So yeah, so in terms of reading food labels, always look at, so first of all, is it a whole food? How many ingredients does it contain? It might have like 50 ingredients, like Les Snacks. I grew up on Les Snacks when we were children. And you look at the little container of it now, and it's got like half of it is just full of ingredients. I'm like, it's meant to be cheese with biscuits, and it's got 50 ingredients. Like, it's so plastic and so bad for you. And then, you might be looking at pasta, and, like normal pasta can have a huge amount of carbohydrates in there, so, which is, which breaks down into fat. So it's just sort of being mindful of, of what kind of quality it is as well. So I hope that's helpful for you. Just kind of going off the cuff here. I haven't really got anything else to, as another example is Carmen's, their little pre-made porridge mixes. So in their serving size, which is one 40-gram packet, actually 40 grams is like that much. So it's like a big handful. So when we were talking about sultanas, if you have like a big handful of sultanas, that's 50 grams. So even if you had half of a handful, it still works out to be 2 teaspoons of sugar. So it's still a lot. I remember growing up, Mum would always have apricots, and they're high in sugar as well. And, we all have these best intentions where we're like, I'm having dried fruit, instead of a chocolate bar. And a chocolate bar has all sorts of chemicals in it, so you're avoiding that by having the dried fruit, but then you're still having all that extra sugar that your body is too much for the body to cope with, and then it just goes and stores it into the fat cells. So yeah, but like with this Carmen's bar here, Carmen's bar, the packet, pre-made one, it contains 6 grams of sugar, but in terms of carbohydrates, it's 22. So when you think about that, that's like 4 teaspoons. So it's interesting, isn't it? Like, so much stuff is bad for us. And I know it looks as though I can't eat anything, but it's just being mindful and having a little bit of the stuff that might be not so good for you. So eating things that you've made from scratch most of the time, and you can make some delicious, healthy things from scratch. And then when it comes to packet treats, it's just having, like, I always sort of say an 80-20 rule. 80% of the time you eat really well, and 20% of the time you have your treats. So, if you want to have a piece of cake, have a piece of cake. Just don't have it for breakfast, lunch and dinner, because you'll feel yuck and it'll cause all sorts of problems. So if you'd like some recipes that are lower in sugar and are tasty and easy to make and simple with easy to find ingredients, check out my recipe section at louiseellennutrition.com.au, and then under resources you'll find them there. Okay, you have a good day. Bye.